Are you looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this football and basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select two or more players, pick more or less on their projections for a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the PrizePicks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, PrizePicks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/bluewire and use code BLUEWIRE. That's code BLUEWIRE at prizepicks.com/bluewire for a first deposit match of up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pod Mavericks Presents After Dark. You're joined by Kirk Henderson and Josh Bowe about 20 minutes after the Dallas Mavericks fell to the San Antonio Spurs, 138-117. Josh, how are you?
I'm doing good. Having a pretty nice little Sunday. Feel like we're just doing this out of obligation. We are
kind of like the Dallas Mavericks.
Yes.
God.
So that was pretty funny.
So, it's Easter Sunday, obviously. My family's not particularly religious. Did some, Easter bunny things. Child is hopped up on candy. Definitely driving my wife and I up a wall. We're watching the game, and the Mavericks, and I don't know if you caught much of the first quarter, but at one point the score was 33-9. When you remove Frank Ntilikina's positive contributions, the score was 33-3. And I got the feeling that the Mavericks were going to make a little bit of a run, and they did, because Jaden Hardy had a 17-point second quarter along with Davis Bertans. And then the second half was just kind of a back and forth affair between two teams just looking to make it through the game.
Yeah, and except the Spurs still made all their shots.
Oh, they eventually just really pulled away. It was like the last 3 minutes of the third quarter. So 138-117. The loss locks the Dallas Mavericks, and interestingly enough, people with brains will understand that the Oklahoma City Thunder won, and then the Chicago Bulls also won. But the Chicago Bulls also beat the Pistons, who've won one time since the season began. Basically, they finished the season 17-65, which locks the Mavs into a 38-44 record. That 38-44 record, unless I am not able to read things correctly, firmly puts the Dallas Mavericks as the 10th worst team in the league. Is that right?
It is. They are locked into 10.
So what that means is the Mavericks' top 10 draft pick is top 10 protected draft pick. When the NBA lottery occurs on May 16th, they stand an 80% chance of staying in that top 10, which was the whole point of this charade. And while I think we could maybe talk a little bit about the game, I don't really there's next to nothing to say about it. And so I think to a degree now we should maybe revisit the last 2 days of the moral panic that seemed to just ensnare, like everybody had a thought that the Dallas, I to this day I still don't. It's a day later. I don't understand what happened on Saturday. What was going on?
I don't know. I don't know why. I think my theory is that a lot of people that aren't us and that aren't full-time Mavericks media people or Mavericks fans, just, they're not like this is the dirty secret. Like not everyone watches all the games. Like we watch the Mavericks. Like we cannot tell you that we are experts on the Timberwolves or the Clippers. Like we do, we watch some other games, but like let's be real. Like it's hard for us to watch other games that aren't the Mavericks. And for national people that have to cover the whole league, I mean, that makes it even harder for them to watch all these teams all the time. And my theory is just a bunch of people that haven't been paying attention to the Mavericks other than Luka Good and the Kyrie trade probably assumed that the team was a little bit better than they were. And then when they see the news on Friday that gets shared that the team is giving up on the season with like the slimmest of hope to still qualify for the 10th seed in the play-in, I think it just kind of smacked a bunch of people in the face that did not realize the Mavericks were in such a grave position. And then it started to lead to some more emotional and irrational takes than they would have happened if they were someone that had been like us and had watched this team every possession, every minute for the entire season, because we knew this team was bad. Like that's why it didn't shock us. It's like, yes, this is the right move. This team is bad. The odds of them getting into 10th are so dramatically lower than I think the odds of them like keeping the pick if they stay in the 10 spot and then moving up. Like I would rather take the odds of the 3% chance of winning the number 1 overall pick than whatever the odds were for the Mavericks before Friday night's Bulls game to make the 10th seed, right? Like I think most rational Mavs fans would have preferred that. So I think it's just a combination of, national media aren't necessarily watching every single Mavericks possession, and that and it's weird. Like I don't blame people for being
well, you watch the chaos that's happening today. So if you've not paid attention to anything that happened today, the Wolves sent Rudy Gobert home mid-game for punching someone. Jaden McDaniels, also a Wolves player, might have hurt his hand.
Might have broke his hand.
Might have broke his hand punching a wall. Bones Highland got into it on the sidelines with the with one of the 13 Plumlee brothers. Yeah. So it's like when you see like weird stuff happening, the argument to be made that could Dallas win 2 play-in games? Yes, they could. I wouldn't put money on them winning 2 because that's hard. The teams are better, but then it's hard to understand. One of the things I think that really hurt us as Mavericks fans this year is that there are elements of the prior 2 seasons. So the Western Conference season and then the post-COVID season that could be deemed outlier situations where the Mavericks won some games they maybe shouldn't. And over a long enough course, that stuff always evens out with team talent. And what we saw this year was the Mavericks underperform, whereas in previous years they've overperformed. We all have been saying this kind of on repeat that, if the Mavericks had won a couple more games, we wouldn't be in this position. And I still think that's true. But what this season has done in a really, really uncomfortable way for casual fans is make note of just how poorly constructed this team was. Obviously, we've talked about that ad nauseum, so there's really no point to revisit it right now, but it's just you look at it's sort of what Dallas opted to do, and it was the right choice. Now, why is everyone so up in arms over it? One of the things that became clear as I talked to more and more people is the brazenness of what the Mavericks did again, just like Mark Cuban saying in 2018 that they were going to tank, caught up with them. That is why the NBA has to open an investigation. A couple people in the chat say, hey, I wonder if they're going to take the pick from the Mavericks. The answer to that is no. David Aldridge, longtime sports reporter, put out an article today on The Athletic basically saying if you really want to investigate the Mavericks, you're going to have to start investigating, 20 years of practice.
Again, this is just like tampering. It's just for show because it was so
what the Spurs were missing their top 8 guys.
Yeah.
Okay. Like what Portland did the other night just is bad. I'm sorry. It is. And I got my friend Matt Moore, who was on the show the other night, to come up and say, I expect more from Luka. I think, and that was the conclusion he came to after thinking about this. He doesn't expect that from Dame. That's an interesting admission. I think, because it goes to sort of show you just what people think of Luka. And I spent some time on a Slovenian Twitter space this afternoon, hosted by my friend Matej. And this is just it shouldn't have happened. You wrote about this. This whole season shouldn't have happened. But we're here now, and this is the last best hope the Mavericks have to do something.
Yep. This is a team that doesn't have a lot of draft picks to trade. This is a team that doesn't have a lot of young talent to develop.
Mm-hmm.
This is a team that doesn't have a lot of cap room going forward. This is the best opportunity this summer to infuse this team with talent, to give this organization one last earnest shot to put a competitive team around Luka before we start getting into, I mean, we're in the danger zone, but before we start getting into the uncomfortable truth of Luka having leverage to demand trades or just reaching the end of his contract. I mean, we're not that far. I mean, we're 3 more seasons, from that.
Tim McMahon of ESPN Dallas, who I have learned, and I guess I'm just a little too close to this, but I have learned that a lot of fans don't like Tim. A lot of fans think that Tim stirs the pot. I just got to be honest, guys. In terms of day-to-day beat reporting, and beat reporting is hard, okay? You're having to talk to people, and then you're having to criticize them in paper, and then you have to go back and talk to those same people. Tim McMahon might be the only regular antagonizer on the beat. And guys, I just have to say this out loud. The point of media is to push and get questions asked. If you want PR, you want public relations, you want to be told everything is fine, the Dallas Mavericks have a literal PR wing, as do every team. It is the job of these reporters to try to get questions answered and push. And Tim is the only one who, in my vein, has regularly done that over the last 3 to 4 years. And he wrote a piece the other night that says very firmly, the Mavericks have a year. They have next season. And that's just right now, because one of my friends brought up a really good point. Luka's going to be hearing how embarrassing the Mavericks are all summer.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. One of the things I love about Indeed is it makes hiring all in one place so easy and streamlined so I can spend more time on the rest of my business. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences. So the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he is. It's not going to be this is not going to be a fun summer. And that's why.
Not for any of us. We all, but that's why I'm saying this out loud is everybody better gird their loins to deal with the suck.
Yeah. And that goes to show why it was even more important for them to lose these 2 games. Cause I'm sorry, but imagine what would happen if Luka and Kyrie played 40 minutes a night, these last 2 games, and you missed the play-in and you've got the 12th best draft odds. So you're not having a draft pick with your second worst season in 5 years, and you're not you don't even get a draft pick to compensate for that. Oh my God. It's just the alternative is just that's it's over and there's not like there's nothing else to talk about. Like it's just running out the clock. At least now we can like realistically look at a path where you think, okay, even if
Hail
they
Mary.
It's
a real honest to God Hail Mary.
But it's, it's at least something. And like at least having the 10th pick, you can trade that. You can take a play. Like there's at least something to build on. If they entered this summer with no draft pick and still capped out, and they only had 2 picks to trade, but those are down the line draft picks that get cleared up. I mean, that's still that's bleak. So I mean, this is their opportunity, and yeah, I mean, the sheen is off. Like, I mean, the Mavericks have been steadily rising since they drafted Luka. Every season since Luka's been drafted, the next season has had a better winning percentage than the previous one. And so, to be fair, like despite our concerns, they have been able to push past that and win more games than the previous team for 3 or 4 consecutive years. And now that's done. And now feel like the realities of the mistakes they've made over those past 3 to 4 years, it's like they all paid them back this one season instead of spreading it out, which is kind of.
I mean, it really felt like all in about 2 weeks too.
Yeah,
because you go back like the Monday to Friday. Tim Cato wrote a hell of a column, post-game column. You like look at what's happened in about 4 to 5 to 6 days, and it's a lot of embarrassing shit at one time.
Yeah, and it's crazy because I think you kind of alluded to this when you were talking earlier. They started Rick Carlisle's last season, so the season before the Western Conference Finals. They started that year like 9-14, and then the season with Kidd, they also started, I think, like 500 or like a game. Like they were like 15-16 at one point. So, and they started this season also poorly. They were like 13-13, poorly as in like their expectations. So we're like, they were able to rebound those 2 seasons, but you can't start seasons poor. Like eventually, like you are who you are, right? Like It's kind of a miracle. I mean, what you've been talking about this for a while. Last season, they basically won like a 60 win team, like a 60 win rate from like January 1st to the end of the year, and they kind of did something similar the year before that. And it's like, how many more of these bad starts can you get off to before it's like, oh, that turnaround's not happening? And especially when like the roster isn't getting better, it's getting worse.
It's getting worse. It's getting worse. And they don't have paths to make it better, which is why this was so important. One guy regularly interacts with us online, Matt Sullivan here, says that Tim didn't say they have a year before Luka requests a trade. He said they could. He doesn't mean it's a guarantee. That's such wishing in one hand and crapping in the other type of, it's like, what's going to fill first? Do we think Luka's going to be happy with the team being worse? That's what all this drives me crazy about. Guys, hold the Mavericks accountable. Cuban has sold us such a bill of goods and everyone is so willing to buy it. I'm getting told right now in the comments that in the post game, our friend Jeff Skin Wade is mentioning how maybe the Mavericks could do a signing trade with Christian Wood. Why would Wood do that? Maybe he could, but I want to know why. He has no reason to help us. He was treated poorly by Jason Kidd.
Well, and also that's not even his decision, right? That's
his agent also probably does. Yeah, right. Aiding the team too. There's just
the other
so
team
much.
has to want to do it.
I feel so crazy, guys. Like, I don't want you guys to be like worried sick that we're going to lose Luka. I want it to be in your head that the Mavericks have put themselves in a position to lose Luka. That's what I'm getting at. It is a tough situation. It's a tough pill to swallow. There are things that haven't worked out, and then there are things they flat out should have done differently. Okay? And where we are now is looking, we're going to try not to look back every time. We're going to look ahead because we have roughly 5 weeks until the draft lottery. And in the meantime, just because 80% is a reason, it's a strong, like it's a super majority and then some. We're going to behave like the Dallas Mavericks are going to keep that pick or have it to use or draft or move as an asset, and because it just makes sense to, 1, for my sanity, 2, for content, because I like talking about basketball. Right. So that's what we're going to do. If they were able, there's a lot of routes once they get that pick where it's like, okay, they jump into the top 4 by like the sheer, like by sheer luck. That changes things a ton. They stay at 10 because those are the options. Top 4, stay at 10. It's not like you could move up to 9 for anybody that doesn't remember. there's still a lot they could do with 10. Like, number one, there's guys I like at 10, but I think that's when they really would consider moving it.
Yeah, for sure. And it depends on who falls and who's there. I mean, yeah, we've got a long ways to go before they get there. Regardless, they're going to have 2 picks that they can trade, whether it's they keep their pick and they can trade it after they've made it, kind of like what they did with the Christian Wood trade. They technically made that pick and then traded it in terms of like the order of operations for the transaction. So, and if they don't keep it, if it's somehow, if they get unlucky at 20% strikes, they move to 11 or 12 or whatever it is, then I think they'll have 2025 and 2027 to trade. So either way, they've got 2 picks to trade. We'll see what they do with it. But I mean, this is kind of funny. Like, despite, like, I feel really not vindicated, but I feel, kind of what we've been talking about with the roster and the talent, like that part of me is still like bugged that it's gotten to this point with the talent on this roster. Like, it's just, I look at it all the time these last couple of days and I'm just like, I can't believe it's gotten to this point when you have a player as good as Luka. And so on one side, that part bums me out. On the other side, like, if they keep this pick, I honestly think I feel more confident in their ability to build something versus maybe the last 2 or 3 summers combined. Like, I don't think I'll ever feel until the trade demand comes in and we'll see what happens. But like that 2019 summer, that broke my soul. Like, the fact that what they did with that max cap room, it bothers me to this day. It might even require us to revisit it sometime, now that the season's over. But now, like having a top 10 pick, being able to trade another pick, having Kyrie, like having an all-star teammate that they can re-sign, hopefully, like, I feel a little bit better than I have in years past. And the fact that I think, that this group, I mean, again, it comes down to Cuban, but in terms of Kid and Nico, like, I don't feel as hopeless that they are committed to the same role players over and over and over again, just by reading between the lines of some of the comments those guys have made about the roster since they've been here. I think there's more opportunity for change than there has been for a while. And I'm not saying it's going to work out. I'm not saying the odds are better. I'm not saying it's good that the Mavericks have reached this point, but compared to like last summer or the summer before that, or even the one before that, I really do think there's an opportunity for them to make wholesale changes that dramatically improve the roster. Like,
I do.
I feel like we haven't been able to say that for a while,
which is weird. So one of our regular friends in the chat, don't want to butcher the name, but Stoika, I don't know, says, basically that I want Luka to leave because I hate Mark Cuban. Like, 2 things. First, I don't hate Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban's been in my life since I was like 14 years old, roughly. Second, he annoys me, and he annoys me because he's wrong a lot. He fails up. Sorry. Like, he wants to be GM, but he doesn't want to do the work to be GM because this is not his full-time job. You can make the argument that he really paid attention to the most his first 10 years he owned the team. Since the championship, he has so much stuff, he doesn't do it. Second, of course, I don't want Luka to leave. Luka is why this happens. Like, what all of us are doing here, like,
Luka's probably why our website is still in existence.
That's correct. Like, our SB Nation, 30% of the websites this year. Part of why, like, a significant portion of why we have traffic and why we do what we do is because Luka Doncic exists. So I absolutely do not want Luka to leave. I know there's I get these amazing comments primarily from people who are overseas where it's like, well, Luka can leave right now because they don't, they think it's like soccer transfer rules. And then I have other comments where people are like, well, he's never going to leave because he's the most loyal guy on earth. And I'm just telling you, Tim McMahon is not getting this stuff out of nowhere. There are people involved in Luka's life, his dad, that talk to people left and right. Okay. And
also Tim McMahon is currently writing a book about Luka.
About Luka Doncic, yeah. So if he says that the Mavericks have about a year to make this right before Luka really would absolutely turn up the heat, then I believe him. The other thing is, I'm sure he has the heat turned up right now because they just missed the playoffs. So it's like I always very much appreciate these comments because again, the interactivity is what makes this site what I want to do differently. So I very much appreciate when people message me. We can feel free to disagree and not be pissy with one another because in the end we don't matter, and then we also don't have any say. So I wanted to throw that out there because I thought that was an interesting comment because I've actually gotten that a couple of times, not from our friend there. And then second, Dirk actually has said on the record that he would have asked for a trade if the Mavericks didn't win in 2011. That's something he has said on the record. So, trying to think what else is this is how prepared we are for this.
Well, it's more just like how much do we want to talk on this pod? Like we've got.
Well, I do. Yeah, I think we should maybe
we've got a lot of other stuff we can just spread out over some time because we've got the time now.
Yeah. I think we should probably do like maybe a couple stages recap of in the coming weeks about how the season kind of got to this point. I felt that Harp did a nice job on the broadcast today, kind of talking about how it's really easy to think that because you get to the Western Conference Finals, you can just do it again. And what the Mavericks tried as a Hail Mary at the, right before the trade deadline with Kyrie didn't work. And I'm going to be continually frustrated all off season, if it constantly comes back to Kyrie. Kyrie was not the problem. Kyrie was excellent. He was just excellent. And that narrative is going to drive me nuts during the off season. What are you thinking right now?
Yeah, it's funny. Kyrie declined to talk to media. I just saw that pop up my timeline. So that's only going to make that narrative grow. It's going to keep going. But
the questions are going to be, are you going to resign?
And he's going to say no. So it's like, why even talk? So
right. Why would you? Yeah. There's a degree of Mark Cuban saying in that thing, we probably shouldn't talk about individual players after he'd already talked about Kyrie, but there's just no point. Like the market for Kyrie is going to be so weird. It's going to really be dependent on how other teams do in the playoffs, I think.
Right. Because it's going to, how desperate are those teams going to be? Like if the Suns somehow fall short of like a conference finals, are they going to be more desperate to change things up? Like, we don't know. Like playoff teams with expectations that don't perform well in the playoffs or overperform, that drastically changes their offseason outlook. I mean, good Lord, look at this. I mean, they certainly felt pretty confident going into last summer that they were riding high and they didn't need to make big changes, and we saw where that landed them. And then on the flip side, we've seen teams hit the panic button after a bad playoff series. So we'll see.
Well, it's so the path the Mavs have to avoid now, in my opinion, if we're looking big picture, is they have to avoid the path of the Hawks. They have to avoid the path of the Portland Trailblazers. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, they're down the path of both those teams. So how do you pull up is the question. And I don't really have a good answer for that outside of sort of wholesale roster changes. I mean, one thing we didn't get a chance to talk about in our live show was after game 81. So the previous game, Jason Kidd actually made a comment about how most of these guys aren't going to be back next year, which with one game to go might be the funniest thing he said all year because he had to go coach them again.
Right.
But like all those, and we know this, they know this, they're professionals. There's probably elements of this that I don't understand, but I'm just like having a hard time if like on a Tuesday afternoon, my boss was like, these guys aren't going to be here next week. Like, how would I go into work the rest of the week? What is going on?
Right. That might explain how those end of the bench guys played today, their motivation to play in this game today. So.
Oh, it's going to be funny. I will say, just kind of looking at the box score again, I'm really inching towards actually being interested in Jaden Hardy, long-term basketball player. Also AJ Lawson, basketball player. It was fun. He was fun today. He's just fun. Like athleticism. Athleticism has just it's lacked on this team for 20 years and they've done fine. So maybe I'm overrating it, but I like seeing it.
It'd be fun. It'd be fun just to have like one or two guys like that. I mean, we're seeing with Josh Green, right? Like, I mean, there's some things he still has to work on, but his athleticism definitely just allows him to do some things that other guys on the roster can't. Of course, you got to pair that with some skill and development, but we'll see. But yeah, I feel the same way. I think Hardy's rookie season, regardless of what we feel about him long term, I think knowing how the league works, I mean, it's huge that he is now something to work with. You know what I mean? Like, you can trade him for something or develop him for something. Like, before the season started, he was kind of a question mark. Like, who knows? He's 37th overall pick. You like the talent, but you never know. So the fact that he was able to kind of show something so quickly opens up another path that the Mavericks didn't have the last two summers. They didn't have a single young guy that they could trade besides Jalen Brunson. So we'll see how that works out going forward.
Yeah. Well, all right. We're almost at about a half hour, which is longer than this game deserved. I'm going to do a post-game show here where you guys can come up and participate. It'll be our group therapy, I guess. That'll be the episode. The Mavericks did lose, but we sort of wanted them to lose. It's always weird how I'm going to do that. I've not yet scheduled it, but I want, pay attention to the YouTube feed. Please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. This is fun. We're up to a pretty good amount of subscribers. I'm very delighted with where we're at. Those of you listening on the podcast, I'm going to try to start doing the Moneyball Minutes again, even though I can't call it that now. Well, I guess I could, but it wouldn't make any sense because we have a different podcast name. I'm going to start doing those again, just with things around the league. Just they're 7 to 10 minutes about what we're seeing out there. Those won't be YouTube shows, just because that would be like me talking into a YouTube screen to be weird. But we'd appreciate if you guys would come back for the live show. I'm probably going to cap it at like a half hour tonight. I did 2 hours the other night on that other show, and I was just wiped the next day. So probably keep like a short show tonight, and then I'll probably do, at least a live show with just me and fan participation at least once a week because it's fun. We picked a hell of a time to start a YouTube channel. I feel kind of stupid about that, but and the chat says, what's the link to the live show? I haven't made it yet because I don't know what time I'm going to do it at. Like, my wife is so tired of me doing this, so it's like I have to thread the needle. So if I get to put our son to bed tonight, then it's probably going to be at about 8 p.m. If she's going to put our son to bed tonight, it'll probably be like 7:15ish. It depends. So thank you so much for hanging out. Go to all the different platforms and give us a rating and review, leave comments. Those sorts of things are very, very helpful. We have so much to talk about. Don't even know where we're going to start. I'm actually going to have to prepare for these podcasts for once instead of just coming in willy-nilly. Josh, you got anything else?
No, let's get out of here.
Let's get out of here. Whew, 2022-23 season at a close, off season, and really a break. So everybody enjoy themselves, and we'll pop back in for the live show. Just be looking for it, and hopefully I'll have it up shortly as to what time it'll be. All right, bye guys.